Guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. I hope you guys are staying safe. I hope everything's good wherever you guys are. So, guys, I saw a quote from Caleb Plant. Says, "Don't be surprised if I stop David Benavidez." Now, that came as a lot of shock to a lot of people. David Benavidez is a guy that a lot of these guys think is something special. You know, my good friend South Central, who's coming at me in the comments, thinks that David Benavidez will stop Canelo. But then South Central, you call me a casual. I mean, thinking that David Benavidez, who went so many rounds with journeymen, in his career, not the biggest puncher. Throws a lot of punches, yes, but he won't stop Canelo. Canelo's got a great chin. And if anyone was going to stop Canelo, it was going to be a technically sound, big, light heavyweight like Dimitri Bivol, who didn't stop him. So there's no way Benavidez, a guy who doesn't really hit very hard, you can tell that, guys that, like, what's his name, Darrell, washed up fighters like that, going so many rounds with him, the same guy that Caleb Plant put to sleep, and this is what I mean. I think some of you guys really overrate David Benavidez and trying to make him out like he's a monster when he's not. And when he fights somebody that can actually fight back, that's actually skilled, that's a good boxer, I think you'll understand. Now, the fight with Caleb Plant for me is a very good fighter. I rate Caleb Plant. The only thing I don't know, I'm very confident that Caleb Plant can beat David Benavidez. Not a problem. Not a problem. But I think the only problem that I have with Caleb Plant is whether he'd be able to keep Benavidez off. And not just that, is whether Caleb Plant looks to me he has a stamina issue, whether he can't maintain his work in the later rounds. And that is when someone like Benavidez might come good. Do I think Caleb Plant stops David Benavidez? No, I think he shouldn't be able to. But one thing I will say is about people like David Benavidez. David Benavidez looks very big, very strong. He seems very powerful. But when these guys who are technically flawed come up against good boxers that have actually good technique, that good movement, they get exposed. And Caleb Plant has the capability of exposing and making David Benavidez look amateurish, because a lot of you guys, sometimes, the hype of a fighter, especially a guy with fast hands, who's not got fast feet, who's technically not the best, when they come up against someone that is technically very good, their fast hands are no good. And they can actually be made to look amateurish, There's many fighters with fast hands, but they have fast feet. They're in sync with what they're doing. Benavidez isn't that. Benavidez has fast hands, but he doesn't have the greatest technique. He's technically, for me, when I look at him, you can tell he's a flawed fighter. But he's very dangerous and he's a very good fighter. That flawed fighters don't mean, like, for example, Amir Khan was a flawed fighter. He was a flawed fighter. He was a much better boxer than Benavidez in terms of technically a better boxer. He had faster hands. He came from an amateur background, won a silver medal. He was technically a much better fighter. But Khan had a very vulnerable chin, and at times he would get caught in positions where he'd get caught with big punches. And that made him a vulnerable fighter. But when I look at someone like Benavidez and I look at someone like Khan, for example, Khan is a lot more technically sound fighter than Benavidez. He's a lot more out the textbook and more correct as a boxer than someone like Benavidez. Benavidez has very slow feet. And when you have slow feet, it doesn't matter how fast your hands are. Your feet have to be fast. Your feet have to be as quick as we saw. As I keep going back to Khan, when later on in his career, when he fought guys like Crawford, and even the last fight he had with Brook, Khan got battered in those fights. Why? And he didn't even have the success early on in those fights because his fast hands were no good, even though his hand speed had slowed down at that point. But his feet were very slow at the end of his career. So when your feet are slow, your fast hands are no good. You still might be able to land a few punches here and there because obviously that skill, that ability doesn't go. But the feet that you had were very difficult. But now if you look when Khan fought Canelo, for example, Canelo was struggling early on in that fight. Why? Because Khan's feet and hands were so fast, ridiculously fast. And Khan, at that point, was a good boxer. So Canelo had a lot of trouble. Now, Benavidez, on the other hand, he just naturally, he's not like he's slowed down. He's just he's like a ploddy fighter. He plods forward and lets his fast hands go. But that against someone that's like Caleb Plant, who's very nimble of feet, who's very fast. You know, there was times in the fight with Canelo's got a lot faster feet than David Benavidez. I can assure you that. There was times in the fight where Caleb Plant was doing well against Canelo, making Canelo look slow. And like I said, Canelo's faster than Benavidez. You know, Canelo had to work very hard against Plant. So I am not convinced that David Benavidez is going to destroy Plant. And like I said, I know I've been watching a lot of boxing last decade, more than that now. I'm not an idiot. I know when I see a fighter that's got technical vulnerabilities, technical flaws in their game, and Benavidez has got technical flaws. Whether you like it or not, it's the truth. You know, he's got technical vulnerabilities in his game and they will be exposed. Doesn't mean he's going to lose against Caleb Plant, but he will, for me, in that fight, you will see what I've been talking about for a while. He will get befuddled in that fight. There is no doubt about it in my mind that Caleb Plant will bring out some of the weaknesses of the slow feet and all of that we've been mentioning in David Benavidez. I can promise you that. Caleb Plant is a really good fighter. I saw what I needed to see against Canelo. And even prior to that, I was very high on Caleb Plant anyway. But the only question I have with Caleb Plant is his stamina. And that's it, really, his stamina. Be able to sustain what he can do early on in the fight. I think early on in the fight, I won't be surprised if he shuts Benavidez out. Like, I mean, shuts him out 3-4 rounds. First 3-4 rounds wins it. But it's whether we can keep that up. And whether the stamina can last, because David Benavidez is a very big guy and he's going to keep plodding forward. And even if he keeps chipping away at Plant, how is that going to affect Plant? And that's the concern I have for Plant in that fight. But in terms of outboxing him, I think the first couple of rounds, I think Benavidez is going to get outboxed without question. You know, this is Benavidez's toughest fight by a mile. By a mile. You know, by a mile. And I don't think this is going to be Caleb Plant's toughest fight, because I think he's had his toughest fight against Canelo. I think it's going to be a tough fight. And I think if David Benavidez can stop Plant, that'll be a statement. Especially if he does it quicker than Canelo and Plant doesn't have any success like he did against Canelo. I think Benavidez would have made a statement. Without question, he would have made a statement. Especially now that after Caleb Plant, doing well against Canelo, they're not just doing well against Canelo, they're actually having that high reel knockout where he knocked Darrell completely cold. I mean, he just knocked him flat. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this fight. I think it's going to be a good fight. But like I said, guys, don't sleep on Plant in this fight. I think some of you are sleeping on Plant. I'm telling you, Plant is a very, very solid fighter. Very, very solid. Very technically sound. Very good. Very fast of feet. Fast hands. You know, he's got a good IQ. I mean, he's a good fighter. He's a good fighter. Like I said, I think Benavidez is going to win this fight. If he's going to win this fight, it's going to be late, where I think he'll just overwhelm Plant later on when Plant gets tired. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Leave your thoughts, guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace, guys.